Which country? This is the classical desert. Endless vistas of emptiness. A desolation of sand, salt flats, and sun. 25,000 square miles of cruel and comfortless wasteland. Such is the sheikhdom of Abu Dhabi, stretching its bleak way from the Arabian empty quarter to the Gulf, abandoned, it would seem, by all the gifts of nature. Only the hardy Bedouin, who take special pride in being master of the desert, could settle here and survive. Of such mettle are the Bani Yas tribes from the Liwa oasis. More than 2 centuries ago, in 1761, their ancestors discovered a well on Abu Dhabi Island. And there they built the first huts of what was to become the country's capital. And indeed, until very recent times, the inhabitants of Abu Dhabi town were still living in homes of baked mud or brittle palm leaves. One building alone stood above and apart in its aloof and dilapidated dignity: the palace of the ruler. Sheikh Shakbut bin Sultan, the former ruler of Abu Dhabi, had granted concessions to various oil companies for exploration in his domain, but little had come of it. Before the discovery of oil, Abu Dhabi had existed tenuously on pearl fishing. But with the 30s came the World Depression, and the Japanese had by then learned to cultivate pearls by the million. The Second World War was one more blow. The oil companies stopped their searching. Abu Dhabi, isolated on the rim of the desert no one wanted, sank into poverty and isolation. Economic depression has not the same meaning for the Bedouin, who have always come to terms with hardship. The people of Abu Dhabi were assured at least of subsistence. They could make do. The coastal people caught the fish. The dwellers in the oases harvested the dates and the vegetables. And between the oases and the towns moved the nomads with their flocks and herds, selling meat and milk. Their cash income might amount only to a few pounds a year, but they lived. Nevertheless, such a living was tough and rigorous and exacting. The land is virtually waterless, and life meant an almost permanent state of movement, mile after mile, from one meager grazing ground to the next. To the Bedou of the desert, with his ancestral memories of tribal traditions, an approaching stranger must always be identified and proved to be a friend. Only then will be exchanged the greetings, the salutations, and the passing on of news. The Bedouin are a tough and durable people. It is their pride that they can survive where few others could. Their manner of life and even their costume have barely changed since the days of Abraham. Their folklore and their poetry are not of tranquil things, but of wars and gallantry, of loyalty, courage, and conquests. Water is scarce in the desert. Out of necessity, they will cover hundreds of miles each year in search of grazing and water. After the Second World War, the oil prospectors came back to the Gulf. Fields for development had already been established in Kuwait and neighboring Qatar. But the Gulf Emirates, with Abu Dhabi the largest, were still a great speculation. In 1949, after long surveys and tests, an oil company began to drill the desert 80 miles from Abu Dhabi town. That same year, the ruler formally declared sovereignty over Abu Dhabi's offshore areas. Then, in 1953, after 2 years of negotiations, he granted a concession to explore 12,000 square miles of seabed off the coast of Abu Dhabi. The experts probed the seabed, examining its composition. And then, after seismic and gravimetric surveys, the drillers chose their spot. They set up their base on a nearby island called Das. The island was transformed into the headquarters for the underwater search. Experts from Europe and many other parts of the world started to descend on the desert island, which till then had only been inhabited by wild birds. The experts brought with them their skills and experience to help create a modern industrial complex. The search took 5 years, but they found oil, more than a mile below the seabed. But was it commercial? Was there enough? After 2 more years of drilling and probing, the answer was yes. Not only that, but very soon the land-based company announced that they too had found oil in plenty. Abu Dhabi had struck it rich. In 1962, a tanker took on the first cargo of crude oil from Das Island. Abu Dhabi was in business. Abu Dhabi had joined the club of the oil-rich Middle East. 27 years had passed since the first concession to explore was granted. Tens of millions of pounds had been spent to develop the offshore field alone. With wells flowing on land and sea, Abu Dhabi suddenly found itself with the riches needed to turn dreams into reality. One long-cherished ambition was to unearth the ancient civilization that had existed in this part of the world. This great stone slab attested to it, chosen by some unknown artist 5,000 years ago for his carving of deer. Deer in Arabic is Dhabi, Abu Dhabi, the land of deer. So teams of archaeologists began their painstaking and patient work. Today, the relics and treasures they uncover are studied and admired in the Museum of Al Ain. But for Abu Dhabi, the riches of archaeology were like one grain of sand in the desert when compared with the gigantic fortune that was now gushing from oil. On this poor desert state, what would be the impact of sudden, immense wealth? How would it cope? History provided the answer. In August 1966, the ruler's power passed to his brother, Sheikh Zayed, an enlightened administrator. Dedicated to leading his country into the 20th century, he declared that all this money should at once be set to work for the benefit of his people. Abu Dhabi, he argued, could now well afford to modify the harsh asperities of the Bedou's life and bring him gently into the present day. Sheikh Zayed commissioned a development plan, a plan to provide all the adjuncts to the 20th century that Abu Dhabi had never known. A state hospital, housing, schools, roads and motorways, drainage, an airport, a harbour. At that time, Abu Dhabi had none of these essential services. No wharves, no warehouses, and coastal waters so shallow that visiting ships were obliged to anchor up to 8 miles offshore. So a fleet of dhows and barges was assembled, and from them mountains of materials were dumped onto the beach. And then it all started to happen. The days of the palm leaf huts were over. For every citizen of Abu Dhabi, a house, a modern house with electricity from a switch and water from a tap. Here, in a place isolated for centuries from everything that lay beyond the desert, the contemporary world surges in. A harbour with a 4.5-mile dredged channel, and quaysides where ships from all over the world can discharge and load. An international airport to receive the world's airlines. Dual carriage roads and broad boulevards for a modern Abu Dhabi town. A town planned for growth and expansion. A bridge to connect the island of Abu Dhabi with the mainland, with Al Ain town 100 miles away, and with other parts of the Emirates. At Al Ain, the main population centre after Abu Dhabi town, where fresh water runs freely from underground springs, an experimental farm was established. To study how vegetables can be grown in the desert sands. How these rich leaves and colours can replace the wilderness. More agricultural experiment on Saadiyat Island, a few miles off Abu Dhabi town. There, the Arid Lands Research Centre offers a strange sight, greenhouses in the desert. The aim is to make maximum use of the area's natural resources, sand, sunlight and sea. Through a curtain of seawater, air is drawn, enabling the atmosphere inside to be controlled. Irrigation of crops is by an economical drip process, applied direct to the roots and using desalted seawater. Vegetables grown in desert sand are now supplied regularly to local markets. Certainly the potential for development along these lines is enormous. In a few years, the Gulf Emirates could be completely self-sufficient in fresh food. Abu Dhabi has welcomed people of many nationalities to help her development. People whose skills and expertise have enabled this young country to make her wealth productive. The foreigners have brought their own ways of life, their own customs. They are free to worship as they please. And they enjoy their own recreations. Change, of course, in some things, but not by any means in the basic foundation of Arab life. Sheikh Zayed will not allow the modernization of his country to blemish his people's traditions. He is determined to safeguard them. And though on some occasions his daily audience, the Majlis, may be a rather formal affair, with the ambassadors and industrialists, the envoys and the businessmen all thronging to present their greetings and respects, the ruler remains available to his own people, whatever their station. The humble Bedou from the desert knows that he is welcome. A sheikh amongst his people. This is central to Arab life. All his life, Sheikh Zayed has enjoyed his people's respect, practicing their ways and joining in their traditional celebrations. Sheikh Zayed's outlook was not confined to Abu Dhabi. He took the diplomatic initiative in organizing a common defense policy for the Gulf Emirates. And in agreement with their rulers, he formed in 1971 the State of United Arab Emirates, of which he was elected president. And their affairs shall be resolved by consultation. The text from the Quran dominates the Union's Federal Assembly, a useful reminder to delegates from the 7-member Emirates. Their job? To formulate and coordinate federal laws and plans so that all may benefit from the political, economic and social developments of the years ahead. For Abu Dhabi, the riches continue to pour in. In December 1973, the ruler visited Das Island for the inauguration of a multi-million-dollar project, a project to utilize the natural gas from Abu Dhabi's offshore oil fields. A liquefied gas plant, the first of its kind in the Arabian Gulf, will produce millions of tons of liquid gas each year for export. You do not transform an archaic Arab state of desert nomads into a 20th century society in a month, or a year, or many years. Many factors are involved. You do it partly by 2-lane highways and street lighting. You do it partly by concrete buildings and main drains. But mostly, you do it through the word. You do it by the fact that today, for the first time in the country's history, an entire generation is being educated. This, more than the roads and the rigs, the airports and the air conditioning, is the real revolution.